It's Tuesday, and you know what that means. Chad and I are back to dive into the real-world challenges and successes of medical affairs leadership. With insights from Chad and other industry leaders, you can't go wrong. After all, leaders don't develop in isolation. Leaders learn from leaders. And we're so glad you're here. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles. I am your host, Chad Fellers, with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. How are you today, Mary?
Thank you. I'm terrific as always. How are you?
I'm doing well. How was your birthday?
It was exactly what I was expecting and wanting, which was like it was just another day. Celebrating the last day of my 30s. Somebody else has a birthday coming up this week as well.
Oh, I was about to say we all have birthdays, Mary. I mean,
this week, though.
Yeah,
because
I know.
you're just a mere 7 days younger than I am.
Something like that. I think it might, either way, I guess we'll save that conversation for later. So Mary had such a great conversation a couple weeks ago with Shelby. Looking forward to the conversation today. And it really is around a great topic. I think that if we're being honest, everyone that's within leadership roles or executives really struggle with this. I think, quite honestly, the society struggles with this, but it's around our relationship with technology and really how much it captivates our time. And our guest today has really worked to tackle this problem. I think faced it himself, but we're going to let him share a little bit about it. His name is Coach Jacob. And it's so funny, Mary. Guilty as charged. I actually came across Coach Jacob scrolling through social media. Yes.
That's the irony.
Yes, the irony of it. But that said, so some good things can come from, and I think it's just a matter of how we balance that. But we'll let Jacob share a little bit of his story with us. So with that, Jacob, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. I hope you're having a great day on your side of the world. Yeah, I go by Coach Jacob on the web. And essentially my area of work, it's helping people to improve and fix sometimes, not just improve, their relationship with technology and all that comes with technology. So the ups and the inevitable downs of technology as well.
So you don't have the accent that Chad has. So you're not from Arkansas, right?
No, I'm not.
Why don't you tell everybody where you're from?
I am from Italy.
And so do you live in Italy now?
Yeah, I do. Oh,
wow.
Live there.
So we've got you in the afternoon today, or later, getting started in the evening since we called you early.
It's 4:15 for me.
All right. Well, super. So what you're doing all across the world, I guess?
Yeah, mainly US. Because I'd say for now, the European market is not as ready for this kind of change, I would say. I tried working with the European market as well, but there's a bit more of, people tend to be a bit more tentative about it.
I thought maybe it was just that we have a bigger problem over here.
I think
could be.
I think that there might be more opportunity, certainly here in the U.S. to be able to kind of address this problem. So listeners, we have searched the world, if you will, literally searched the world to be able to help kind of tackle this. So, Jacob, I know that our podcast does reach international levels. You may have not listened to our podcast in the past, but in case you haven't, we usually start with our key takeaways with our guests, right? So the listeners, if they are trying to be good stewards with their time and they're in the midst of travel, et cetera, they can at least hear kind of what the key takeaways are going to be so they can come back and listen, dig in a little bit more. So with that, why don't you share your the key takeaways for our listeners today?
I'd say the key takeaways will be how to improve our relationship with technology and what's the role of dopamine in that, and how does that affect our day-to-day life in terms of how motivated we are, how stressed we are, how burnt out we are. And finally, I would say, what's the impact of stress, beliefs, and the environment on our use of technology?
So I gotta be honest, Jacob. This is gonna be a good discussion, and I am guilty as charged. I really cringe every Sunday. I think about 9 or 10 in the morning. I get this notification from my iPhone as far as the amount of screen time that I spend on it. I try to justify it in ways of saying, well, I mean, it's my email and some like those things from work, or I'm always talking on my phone for work. But when I look at the numbers, I mean, sometimes it ranges, and I hate to even say this to the to the listeners, 7 to 8 hours a day. And so where does that time come from? Obviously, it's not in the middle of the day, but it's even in the evenings. How's this impacting my family time? How's this impacting productivity? Why do I do it, et cetera? So would love to hear. Let's first talk about improving our relationship with technology. When did you recognize this issue in your own journey? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, for me, it started when I got my first job with a quite renowned company. And essentially, I was always tired and demotivated, like for no apparent reason. So that's when I started looking more into the science, trial and error, try this, try that. I felt stuck a bit. I felt, okay, I'm putting all this effort and I can't seem to like improve. And for me, the work is tough. Challenges are not the easiest. Answers aren't always, let's say, the most clear. There's a lot of money involved in those transactions. So what happens is, oh, this problem is tough. I have 27 tasks I need to juggle. Let me just take a 5-minute break, because what devices do, they essentially, most of the times, they're essentially really good at calming ourselves down in terms of essentially scrolling is like dopamine gets released because you know that eventually you're going to find something that you like. And that calms your amygdala, which is in charge of your negative emotions. So for those 5, 10, 15 minutes, you don't feel that dread of, oh, I need to close this 8-figure transaction or someone is going to get mad. You don't feel it anymore. It's like on pause. But then it restarts. Once the real life restarts, it restarts. However, you had a double negative effect. One is you're not dealing with a problem, so the problem only gets bigger. And the other one was you prevented yourself from getting into, let's say, deep work or the flow state in which high performers are the most performing, which is no distraction, just one task, laser focused. And that's when the kind of work that really moves the needle is done. It's not done in sports here and there of work. In that case, you are operating at like probably at less than 50% of your potential easily.
So how is that preventing you from getting into flow?
Yeah, essentially, you can think about us humans as points in space. So every thought we have, every action that we can take is like an arrow. So imagine from yourself, you have like 10 arrows going outwards. So those arrows are the number of things that you can do. Imagine having 10 thoughts in your mind. So what happens is that you only have a certain amount of energy and focus that you can put onto things, right? So the more things you have in your mind, the less energy you can give to each one of those at the same time, of course. So the more you eliminate, the more your energy can be all channeled on one action. So that, imagine it like this, right? You can either work at something for 3 hours with maximum intensity, so let's give it 10, and that will give you 30 units of work done. Or you can work at something for 10 hours at intensity 3. So that means distracted. And that will still give you 30 units of work. But the delivery is 7 hours. So if you're trying to get as much work done as possible to the highest quality, you absolutely need to just have one focus. Like you can't afford to have more than one thing at a time in your brain. Like if you're trying to actually achieve something that of a certain caliber. Absolutely, yes.
So I guess the scenario is, what are you controlling, right? Are you being controlled or are you controlling? So are there so when it comes to really with the focus of technology, why is that such an escape? When you talked about it being scrolling till you find something that you like, but are there other techniques like colors or those types of things that are captivating as well too, that different companies are utilizing to really kind of stimulate that in the brain? What have you found with that as well too?
Yeah, let's just say that as we are speaking right now, there are people being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars just to find ways to make us spend that additional second, minute, hour on some devices. I will not go into the reasons. I think this will be like that segment in which I just throw the rock and then everybody just, oh, let me look into it. So I will leave it at there. Essentially, the mechanism is quite simple. So the mechanism is you get stressed by external life. Your dopamine baseline goes below baseline. So that means you are in a state which is called dopamine deficit. Your instincts, I don't want to be too scientific, kick in. And essentially your brain starts scanning the environment for activities that will help as fast as possible, because we are in a fight or flight situation, to get your dopamine back to baseline. So imagine that every time you get stressed, your brain automatically, you don't need to do anything, goes into panic mode, let's say, and starts scanning the environment for activities that, with little to no effort, will just give you relief. And sometimes I joke with my friends and I say, if I was able to engineer a gum, let's say a gum that's sweet, and I will give you the gum, you will pick the gum because it takes less effort to eat the gum rather than go on your phone. So it just happens that the phone is the easiest thing to access.
So would you say that our baseline level of the need for dopamine increases? Like, so do we, is there resistance, I guess, that's developed that requires a stronger or heavier amount of dopamine to be able to reach that new baseline, right? I mean, is it always evolving? Is that something that when you're thinking about your program or really kind of tackling this, are we trying to reduce that baseline as well too?
We tend to have a baseline that's always a bit on the pain side, which means we are extremely bored, extremely underwhelmed. So we feel this compulsive need to just spike it.
Gotcha. Wow.
Because in a sentence, let's say life has gotten too easy. Any pleasure is within a click distance. So it's like there is no need to put in any effort to get to your primary needs. That's the thing. So that's when hard work becomes extremely hard, because if you never had any need to work hard.
Tell us more about your program and at a high level, like what someone could expect with this. But just love to hear more.
Yeah, sure. My program essentially helps high performers, specifically CEOs, entrepreneurs, executives, because those are the ones, at least from my experience, that can really find the most value from what I have to offer. Because I don't necessarily, let's say, help people make more money. I help them reclaim more time. And these professionals tend to be the ones that, let's say, financially, they are already doing good, right? So what they lack is the quality of the time that they're spending at work and outside of work. So essentially, the work is helping them reclaim that time reducing that stress, reducing that burnout, such that they can be more present with their kids and at work as well, right? To operate on that in that creative mode rather than fight or flight. Oh, the office sent me this email about taxes and my heart has just dropped on the floor. And I'm like paralyzed. That kind of thing. Yeah, we go from there to, I already knew it could happen. And yeah, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Who cares right now? I have better things to do. It's a kind of thing. So essentially, we do that through three main assets. So the first asset is, as we know, our brain are supercomputers. But when our dopamine receptors are a bit fried, let's say, from all the stimuli, it's like using 1/10 of the computing power of it. So first of all, we need to re-give access to all of that computing power, right? So that's done through a process which I call dopamine calibration. So essentially, we look at where do you get your dopamine from? What's the need behind it? Because it's not just a matter of replacing things. It's the biggest thing is understanding what kind of need are you trying to satisfy when you get your dopamine that way. And can we find new directions in which we can get the same dopamine, however, with another path, let's say, to the same need. Second one is understanding their triggers, essentially their programs, looking at their maladaptive programs and reprogramming them such that now they are positively adaptive rather than maladaptive, which is essentially how do we remove power from those triggers. So what once used to make you anxious, how about we make it such that it doesn't make you anxious anymore? So it's like removing power from the trigger, because behind the trigger, there's a lot. There are emotions, there are limiting beliefs, limiting decisions. I'm not good enough. I need to prove that I'm good, or otherwise they're going to think I'm a fraud, whatever. Those are limiting beliefs. Like, it's not written anywhere that you're not good enough. Like, it's just something that has been created in your mind as a coping mechanism, right? So we can remove that. And finally, because again, this is something I always tell my clients is, I'm not here to give you another job. So how can we make sure this is a framework that can be used for 10 to 15 minutes a day at most, such that we can start that reprogramming process. Because essentially, while we live, while we go out, while we talk to our people, we are getting, in a certain sense, brainwashed. Not in the negative term of, not in the negative meaning of the term. Everybody's brainwashed by a different program. That's why they say, oh, you are, let's say, there's a big discussion amongst religious and non-religious people. You are brainwashed by religion, or you are brainwashed by atheists. And it's like, who isn't brainwashed? That's the real question. And now everybody has his own program that's had been washed with. So that's why brainwashed. And this is why technology is extremely dangerous for children, because technology gets introduced while their brain is developing. Imagine your brain is developing and all the stimuli that you get on your brain essentially tell you it's okay to change context every 3 seconds. It's okay to scroll and change subject every 20 seconds. And you should always, and if you feel bad, you can just calm yourself down with a device while your brain is developing. These are the kind of signal that your brain is getting, because your brain is adaptive, right?
That's fascinating. Wow. So we are conditioning ourselves even at a young age. And so being able to not only acknowledge this, but then even take steps to address it, I think are important. I was thinking about one of the examples of trying this and thinking about the whole, when I asked about the colors, right? So one of the, I think I read something at one point where I basically took my phone and made it gray screen, to take away all the different colors of the apps and things. And automatically my time went down on that as well too. And I think probably, I guess you just addressed it, right? It reduced that dopamine hit that I was getting from that. But I never really put the connection of why. I think that's why are we seeking that dopamine? So you talked about the role of dopamine in the day-to-day life as a high performer. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'd say So when it comes to high performers, you have to expend a lot of mental energy to solve problems, either for themselves or for their clients. So that means the solution to the problem, how do you go from problem to solution, is most of the times, if not always, is not a linear thing. That means at the start, especially at the start, you're gonna feel overwhelmed by the complexity of the problem. Because if you already knew how to solve that, you would have already done it. So what happens is that you have that period of time, let's say, in which you tend to be really overwhelmed by the challenge. So what happens, you get into this fight or flight response. You're not acting from a creative perspective, you're acting from a survival perspective. So that means the new challenge, it's not, and this is how normally we are wired. We are normally wired from a survival, from fear. So I fear of not being able to do that, hence I need to fight. You don't see the challenge as an upgrade. You see it as a threat. And when you see things as a threat, you're fighting. And again, that means tension is absorbed by your body. Tension builds up on your body. So when the day ends, you feel pain on your shoulders, on your back, on your neck. So what happens for high performance is, first of all, you need to help them get out from survival mode. And that's only done through a rewiring, let's say more of a subconscious rewiring. So you need to reteach them the meaning of what they feel. So what they might describe as fear, or for some people is even imposter syndrome, is actually, and you can do it in different ways. I like first to be logical about it and then emotional about it, because we are still human, so we need the emotional part more than the logical part. So every time you encounter a threat, essentially you can imagine yourself as a little bubble. The threat is something that resides outside your bubble. So your brain goes like, okay, do we want to include this in what is our normality? This is an anomaly. So it's going to give you a signal. And that signal might be a signal of feeling a bit uneasy, right? However, when you know why you feel something, then you can act from a creativity point of view, not from a survival point of view. I know why during a podcast I feel a bit anxious, because I never done a podcast. The podcast is outside my bubble. So that means this feeling is just a little price that I need to pay to extend this bubble. And now podcast becomes part of my normality. So the next thing might be talking to a group of strangers. Just an example. Because that's the trick there. Most people, they might want to go from 0 to 1,000, but they haven't done step 1. So what I normally do is, if my clients want a big of a change, I ask them, okay, have you ever done that change in your life? And the answer is no. It's a rhetorical question. So what I ask them is, what is the easiest version of the change that you're trying to do? Let's work on that first, right? Why are we trying to do 1,000 push-ups when we never done even half of a push-up? Let's start from
I feel targeted just now. I've done more than half of a push-up though. I did 10 this morning. So
Wow. Well,
I'm so like to what he's saying. I'm working up towards. Paige can do 50. I'm not much of a push-up girl. But this is all really interesting. So is this kind of some of the, and I guess we haven't asked you yet, like what your like educational whatever background is, but does this sort of fall under a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, to retrain your brain that it's not fear that you're feeling, it's something else?
It is. I am, like my studies, I am certified in other things like NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy. I'm not necessarily, let's say, certified in any neuroscientific field. But yeah, essentially, you can think of our behavior as programs running in our brain. So that means when there is a trigger, there is a response, and then the response has some feedback, right? So if I see this color, let's say, I might think of something, and then I feel this way. And that's the feedback. So imagine thousands or hundreds of thousands of programs running in our brain at the same time, in our subconscious mind, which is, you could say it's our reactive mind. It's what happens when we don't think about it. It's me, for example, talking right now. I'm not really thinking about every word I'm saying, right? It's just automatic. So that's subconscious. That's my programming. However, a programming, the same way it has been created, because nobody has been born, let's say, with a preset programming, let's say, or with the action programming, we can do the same to change it to our advantage. So what once was, let's say, fear, tomorrow could be excitement. It's just an example, of course. Yeah.
So it's a mindset shift. And so I know you mentioned in our initial conversation some of your background of engineering in ways, right? So Mary, I think that this really kind of I can hear that in you as well too. You're talking about process, right? Like what's A to B, B to C, et cetera, to make these things work, recognizing that, and then that became your pursuit for this program, not only for you but for others as well too. Just thinking about, you mentioned earlier, you talk about living in fight or flight. I mean, I had that exact example of living that for about 2 years, and I can tell you that. I mean, I tried sauna, I tried all these different things as well, and it was several MRIs, all these types of things. I had basically numbness that was going down one side, or sciatica, if you will, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. Nothing.
It was a terrifying time.
Nothing. And nothing could be determined. The neurosurgeons looked at it. It was crazy. And what we realized is it was stress. I mean, it was the stress. It was, my body had been reconditioned to live in fight or flight because of the environment that I was in. I love what you're doing with this. So you also talked about the impacts on how it relates to stress, beliefs, environment. Tell us a little bit more about how all these are tied together. You talked about that as your last takeaway. How does that relate to the role of dopamine as a high performer, our relationship with technology? Love to hear more.
Yeah, essentially our responses. Like imagine we are born as humans with our, let's say, natural instinct. And then our programming changes because we have interactions with our parents, with people, with the environment, with teachers. And then we start creating our beliefs, presuppositions, values. However, what happens is our brain, it's really adaptive, right? So if I find myself in a suboptimal environment, my brain will adapt such that I can survive in that environment, right? So, for example, when you think about things like imposter syndrome or needing validation, even at work, those are all things that start in childhood. They don't start in adulthood. The reason why people, let's say, get to the top, not always, of course, is because somebody, when they were little, they told them, this idea is dumb. You'll never make anything of this idea, right? So what happens is that they are fueled by doubters. So they get to their top, they get there, and then they don't hear the doubters anymore. And then I ask them, okay, where's the fuel right now? What we gonna do right now? So what happens is that they go back again, they go down again, up again, down again, up again. And it's like infinite, right? Because you're using a fuel that's not sustainable. However, that fuel has born in your childhood because you thought that in order to be, let's say, loved, you needed to make things to make your parents happy, for example, right? So that's a block because it helps you because your brain is going to adapt because your brain wants you to survive. So to survive, we're going to adopt this mindset. So you're going to use this mindset in your academic academic life as well, in your work life as well. But you're gonna come to a point in which there's no doubters anymore. Like nobody cares. So what happens there, right? So that's when you need to help the person escape survival and help him work in creativity. There's a difference between escaping hell and running towards paradise. The way I work with clients is, okay, how can we run towards paradise and we forget that hell exists? We don't care about hell because hell is fight or flight. Paradise is creativity. It's a metaphor, of course, whether people believe in it or not. It's just a metaphor. So
what's interesting about this, if you don't mind, I don't know how familiar you are with Elon Musk, but I read the book. I say it's his book, but he didn't write it, but he was interviewed for it. Anyway, I mean, he had a horrible childhood where he was horribly mistreated by his dad. He was beat up all the time by kids. And he's extraordinarily successful now, right? And then people are like, I love Elon Musk, I hate Elon Musk. So I wonder with a guy like that, if because his dad isn't beating him down every day and he's not getting beaten up by the kids at school, if subconsciously he's trying to create that fuel by having this animosity around him all the time.
Yeah, this works, but the problem is I don't know Elon Musk. I think few people know personally Elon Musk. And what happens, I mean, when I say no, I mean know what's happening inside Elon Musk. That's what I mean, not know the character.
Right.
Because I've had people, tell me, if this guy can, for example, get wasted every weekend and still win the World Cup, then I can do the same. And then I tell them really bluntly, there's a reason why he's doing that, and you're here talking about him.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
That means instead of using someone else's, let's say, maladaptive behavior to give ourselves an excuse, how about we ask ourselves, what if I was free of this maladaptive behavior? What if I was able to just put myself in a situation in which it's me versus me? It's not me versus me that has a hangover, right?
I love that. Me versus me. Yeah, I'm not saying whatever it is that Elon Musk is out there doing is probably the right approach.
Of course.
But, I just kind of wonder if that's his search for that fuel. So instead of the maladaptive behavior, what are you saying is the best way to go?
The best way to go is what's let's say a positive vision that's pulling me towards something. So instead of escaping from a hot fire, it's like being motivated by let's say how do you call it it's like a beautiful village, let's say, an oasis. I don't know if that's a word in America.
Yes. It's also a rock band.
Yeah. It's like being motivated again by paradise. So let's say something clean, really, the temperature is good, there is love, there is belonging, rather than the opposite, which is fighting, or you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Like, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm making a lot of notes on everything you're saying, because I really feel like, if we're, besides talking about implementing all of these ideas in your work life, this could totally be implemented in all parts of your life.
So you mentioned something earlier, Jacob. So you were saying, stepping into the creative mindset versus living in the fight or flight. So I think both modes can be beneficial at times, right? So it's not necessarily saying the fight or flight is moments of those types of things or those stress are bad necessarily, but it is when those are the dominant force or that's how you're operating day in, day out, hour to hour, moment to moment. Is that, or tell us more when you're talking about creating that opportunity to be in the creative space, are we saying that we can't do both? What are you actually saying with that?
I don't know if you ever watched boxing or MMA. Yeah, if you go back, I think 10 years in time, and I think this is a title fight between, who was it? Was a Brazilian and an Irish guy. So Aldo and McGregor.
So Conor McGregor.
Yeah, Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo.
Right.
Okay, when the fight hasn't yet started, and you look at the people inside, you can look at, like, that will be the perfect example with people that know what I'm talking about, of course, of fight or flight versus creative mode. One is stiff, reactive, tense, that's Jose Aldo, and the other one is like bouncing on his feet, laughing, proactive, ready to go. So that will be the equivalent of creative mode versus fight or flight mode. One is reactive, the other one already knows what's going to happen. That's the difference. The more you can live in the other one, so let's say the McGregor mode, at least the old one, not the one of today, you can, that's when you can get much faster to your next breakthroughs. Because you are driven by curiosity. Imagine yourself being like a child. That will be the easiest way. Imagine yourself being a child, curious, you're not afraid of making mistakes. You're just experimenting. You're laughing. You're getting dirty, and you're trying. That's the creative mode. So essentially, it's a work of reverting back to our original state, if you really think about it. That's it.
I have used that in some of the talks that I've given too about this, creating a culture of curiosity, or the number one characteristic within those in medical affairs are, those that are asking questions, wanting to know why. I mean, that kids ask an average of 200 questions, I think, a day, I think is what they said, from ages 3 to 5. Why is it when we get into these leadership roles, or the more we are promoted, we quit asking some of those types of things? And so not only is it important to create that space for our own selves, but how are we creating that for our teams as well too, to be able to live in that creative space?
For our listeners, and we'll share this electronically as well, but website, Twitter, or X, sorry, Elon, Instagram, whatever way that people can find you and reach you, please share all of that with us too.
Yeah, you can find me on X at the Coach Jacob. So that's my handle name, and my website is thecoachjacob.com.
The Coach Jacob.
Yep.
So
on that, you've got different testimonials or story, right, of people that have gone through your program. When you think, or just on average, Jacob, what is the time? You mentioned 10 to 15 minutes, maybe a day, but I know it's a virtual program that you have these conversations. Obviously, maybe I could figure out a tax write-off and figure out a way to fly over to Italy to maybe to have one-on-ones live with you, but you do this all from a virtual standpoint. But from a time frame or commitment, even just with conversations with you, what does that typically look like for your clients?
Yeah, we normally have weekly conversation of like 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes. And then normally clients have access to me whenever they need. The program lasts from like 60 to 90 days, but they have access to me. So with questions, with doubts, and the only effort that's really needed from them is those, like 5, 10 to 15 minutes a day to apply the frameworks. And that's pretty much it.
So do you have, I know that I'm an exception to the rule, obviously. Do you had clients that average 6 to 8 hours of screen time? Give us an idea of what someone could typically expect if they go through the program, how much time they could potentially reclaim from taking these steps.
Yeah. So the first thing I discuss with my clients is, okay, how much of that time is really, let's say, time that you want to cut? Because not all screen time, let's say, it's wasted. especially if someone works with it. So I will ask them, okay, how many hours, let's say you're spending on social media. So they might say, okay, it's 8 hours in total, but 5 on social media. So then my question is, okay, how many of those hours do you want to cut? I give them the choice because maybe they're like, okay, I want to keep 1 hour. So, okay, I say, okay, then I will help you cut the other 4. So normally it's, on average, it's plus 3 to 4 hours a day of free time for them to do what they decide to do, which is not scrolling.
Something you're doing there with that too is you're giving your clients control as well too, right? I mean, I think that there is probably a greater acceptance rate of putting the steps in place if they feel like they're in the power or they have the power of making this, right? I mean, versus being told what to do. I think we say that oftentimes, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. But I think the reality is we may try it, but we don't stick to it because of those competing interests that we have, right? Those habits we've already formed, not addressing some of the issues and that we've maybe haven't been identified yet. And so we just want to keep going on. So I like that you empower your customers to help give that type of decision, and then you plug and play with that. Anything else you want to share about your program, Jacob?
No, not really. I worked really hard to make it as not invasive as possible. No long routines, no morning routines, no pre-bed routines, just really calculated frameworks to be used every day. It's just about that consistency. And I help them as well build that consistency in using the framework. Because for some clients, they tend to be really easy, so they overlook them. So you're like, okay, do you want me to make it harder for you? Yeah, sometimes it happens, but other than that, it's quite straightforward. We are essentially doing what has already been done in the opposite direction. That's what we're doing. Again, what I wanted to say before, it was that we are consistently getting programmed every day by something, by someone, by an idea, by the news, by everything. In whatever way it's out there. I'm not saying it's in a good way or in a bad way. We decide what we want to do with that information. However, if we are not the ones programming ourselves, something else is doing it. Again, it doesn't need to be a person, it doesn't need to be television, it doesn't need to be Netflix. It could literally be, I don't know, the McDonald's. Like a McDonald's, it's like the smell of the food. It's like a message coming to your brain telling you can eat this food, which tastes really good, and it's really cheap. There is nobody telling you that. It's just how the environment is designed. So how can we do the same for the things that you really want? That's the main question.
The smell of McDonald's makes me physically nauseated.
Me too.
Now, Chick-fil-A, different story. Chick-fil-A nuggets, oh my goodness.
Do you have Chick-fil-A in Italy?
No, but we have a lot of McDonald's.
Stay away from McDonald's. Chick-fil-A, though.
I don't know.
The fries. You gotta have some Chick-fil-A.
Fries are pretty good at McDonald's. I mean, let's be honest.
Them in hamburger grease.
Well, I mean, that's neither here nor there. I mean, you can only live once. We can only listen. Let's fight certain battles, Mary. We don't always have to fight the fries, right? I mean, maybe we start with screens and then maybe make the transition to fries. So,
or Nando's. Do you have Nando's in Italy?
No, nachos.
It's Nando's. Nandos. They're in England, but I didn't know if they were all over that part of the world.
Okay.
But it's
they don't have
delicious
good food in
chicken.
England, so we don't bother with that. It's not good.
You guys have half decent pizza and pasta there, so you don't need Chick-fil-A or Nando's.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, anything else? No, you're good, Mary. Any other questions or comments you have, Mary?
just wanted to wish you a happy birthday again.
Well, now back at that,
Good job.
we've thank you. We've gone full circle. I am going to apply this, Jacob. I'm going to refocus my mind and say that this is just another year that I get to enjoy new opportunities and experiences, and not think about, gosh, I'm getting old, my bones are kind of slow, my muscles going away, all that kind of stuff too. So it's all about how I'm framing the conversation. I'm not going to stress about those types of things. I'm going to embrace it and see what's there for me for this coming year of age 29. So Mary, you didn't make any comments. Thank you for not.
It was difficult, trust me.
Okay, fair enough.
Also, guys, Coach Jacob is on LinkedIn, so follow him, connect with him there. The Coach Jacob on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, and thecoachjacob.com is his website. Just wanted to remind everybody.
I love it.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts from you, Coach Jacob, before we wrap up today?
Not really. I just want to thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being awesome.
Hey, we'll have you on more often just because you close with being
Weekly.
awesome. We'll take that. So yeah,
my dopamine's going crazy right now.
Coach Jacob, thanks so much. Thanks so much for taking time. I know you're halfway across the world. For you to be able to do this at the end of your day means a lot. I know that our listeners are going to appreciate it. So thanks so much for joining us. Listeners, thanks so much for tuning into another episode of MSLE Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. As you know, leaders don't develop in isolation. So please continue to join us along our leadership journey. Until next time, have a good one.